Hi, my name is Gina Stoliker, and I'm here to present to you a professional development workshop on the topic of cooperative learning. I'm going to start today with a quote by Vygotsky that says, "What children can do together today, they can do alone tomorrow." And I think that's a good quote to kind of introduce the topic of cooperative learning, because children, when working in small groups or with partners, can really expand their thinking and can accomplish things that they couldn't do alone. Yet, those skills that they learn when working together can actually help them achieve those same skills and same abilities alone in the near future. So, why use cooperative learning? Well, I'm sure many of you have seen William Glasser's research on the different types of learning that we have and how much of it we learn. So, we learn 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we both see and hear, 70% of what is discussed with others. So that's getting up there. That's where we want to be, 70% discussed with others. Cooperative learning is definitely discussing with others, so that's there. 80% of what we experience personally, and then a whopping 95% of what we teach someone else. And cooperative learning, a major component of that is teaching other group members. So okay, I want to stop here for just a second and have you guys do a quick goal setting for today's workshop. The first thing I want you to do is just simply think about what your expectations are for this session. What do you want to get out of it? What do you hope to learn about cooperative learning? And then I want you to pair with another team member to discuss your expectations. I want you to share as a team your expectations to our group. And then after we share it all out, we're going to go ahead and set a couple goals for your team that you actually want to accomplish during our session. You're going to go ahead and write those goals on the back of your team's table place card. And that's just to help us kind of keep focused during today's session and to let me know where you guys hope this takes you. Think, pair, share is one example of a cooperative learning strategy, and we're going to go over it a little bit more in a few minutes. At this time, I'd go ahead and stop for, 2 or 3 minutes or however long I feel like most of the teams were able to complete this assignment. It's a simple think, pair, share. I'm sure many of them have done it. So I would do that, and then I would pick up with, what is cooperative learning? So let's go ahead and define it. This is an instructional strategy that involves small groups of students. Usually it's going to be 3 to 5 members. Younger ages need smaller groups. You can do a little bit larger groups at the older ages, middle school or high school. Essentially, students work together to solve a problem or complete a task. There is individual accountability, and all group members must work together in order to complete the task. So, cooperative learning is quoted by Johnson, and Holobeck in 1993 as the instructional use of small groups so that students work together to maximize their own and each other's learning. Students are basically responsible not only for their own learning, but also for helping their teammates learn, for helping their group members. That is an essential part of cooperative learning. Group work and making sure that everyone gets what they need from each lesson or each activity. Cooperative learning exists when students work together to accomplish shared learning goals, and it's also just a kind of a generic term. Cooperative learning can cover a bunch of different numerous methods. So, and any teacher really should be able to find a way to use cooperative learning. I'm sure most teachers have used it before. But if not, I'm going to give you some great ideas for using it. Basic elements. Okay, let's break it down. Basic elements. According to the Johnson & Johnson model, cooperative learning includes the following 5 basic elements. So we have 5. Positive interdependence, individual accountability, face-to-face interaction, collaborative skills, and group processing. And we're going to break down each of those 5. Positive interdependence. So this means that team members are obliged to rely on one another to achieve the goal. If any team members fail to do their part, everyone suffers the consequences. So basically this means that for each assignment that you guys are going to assign to your different groups, that they all are going to share mutual goals. They're all going to get joint rewards. They're all going to share materials, share information. They're going to have different assigned roles that you can create or they can create with you, where each member is dependent on another person for getting their job done. And they all have to come together to make the one final product. The second thing, individual accountability, means basically that students in a group are held accountable for doing their own work. Each member has to learn the material. Each member has to complete the tasks. And teachers, it's really important to go ahead and assess individual learning, even though it is a group project and there may be some components that are group graded, but that there needs to be some sort of individual accountability so that, certain stronger students or higher achieving students are not carrying the load for lower proficient students. So the third thing, face-to-face interaction. This is really important. This is kind of the meat of cooperative learning. It's, even though some of the group work might be done individually, most of it is going to be done interactively. So group members are going to be discussing with each other. They're going to be summarizing different parts. They're going to explain and elaborate to one another. They're going to also receive feedback, maybe peer editing from each other. So the teaching and the learning and everything is all combined. It's all with each other. So that face-to-face interaction is really important during group and collaborative work. Okay, collaborative skills. So this next thing is basically all of the different skills that they learn to exercise, which are really, really critical in moving past schooling, right, into the workforce or into college or whatever you might do in life. It's just getting along in life. This would include things like communication skills, leadership, the ability to take charge when needed, yet just participate and take a backseat role also. Decision-making, conflict management, making sure to be able to solve problems, which involves active listening, making sure that you're challenging the ideas and not the people, so we make sure to respect one another, and obviously lots of compromising. Okay, the next part of the essential basic elements of cooperative learning would be the group processing. And this is going to include that team members need to be setting group goals. They also need to kind of make sure, how is it working? Are they doing certain things well? Are they doing certain things not well? And they need to be able to kind of identify the changes so that they can more efficiently work together as a team. Maybe they had a breakdown in a certain step and they talk about what that breakdown was and how maybe come up with some ideas on how they could fix that in the future. So this applies both to learning tasks, so the academic part of the assignment, as well as social skills, getting along, working together, and then making sure that self-assessment, that they not only think about how the group's working together, but how is their own contribution to that group. Okay, let's talk about implementing. Now that we know what it is, let's talk about the steps that are needed to implement this in your classroom. There's a couple different types of cooperative learning, 3 major types. The first one would be formal cooperative learning, which consists of students working together, usually a class period to several weeks. It can be any of that. It's basically a group that works together formally because they're set up usually by the teacher as far as we'll get into the setup of the different groups, but it's more of a formal process, and they're always trying to achieve the same learning goals, and they're jointly working together to complete tasks and assignments. So informal cooperative learning is the second type. That would be usually just temporary groups, maybe a few minutes, maybe the entire class period, but once that class period ends, it's usually the group's dismantled. It's not a group that they meet consistently with. However, cooperative-based groups, the third type of cooperative learning, is a group that is long-term. It's a heterogeneous group, meaning that they are different abilities, different gender, race, everything that you can kind of, the ways that you can get more different perspectives and different ideas flowing. However, the stable membership in the group is really important because they promote, that group would promote like like interdependence, maybe accountability towards one another, making sure they're staying on task, and just overall support, feeling of family. So these 3 types of cooperative learning was by Johnson and Holoveck again, 2008. Okay, the implementation steps. So what exactly do we need to do to get this into our classroom? The first thing is you would obviously need to do some pre-instructional planning. That's going to include specific techniques that you want to use. You're going to plan out exactly the groups that you want, how you want those groups to work. You're going to then introduce that activity to the students, and that's where you're going to explain the task to them. You're going to tell them both what the academic criteria are, as well as the social and emotional type skills that they're going to be working on. You want to make sure that special attention is to the positive interdependence of the group and that they're all going to be individually accountable. So make sure to set up time limits and allow for clarifying questions during this time. This is really when they get to hear from you about what the expectations are. From here on out, they really take control of it. So this is important to answer any of those questions. Monitor and intervene would be the 3rd step. And obviously that would be circulating through the room, collecting observation data, seeing whether they understand the assignment, giving them some immediate feedback and praise for working together. If the group is having some problems, making sure that you can intervene. If they're having problems academically, you can help in that way. And if it's more of a social thing that they're disagreeing or not being respectful, you can do some reteaching or what you might need to do there. So monitoring and intervening is really important. The next, also really important, it would be obviously the assessment. You're going to be assessing while you're monitoring the groups during the exercise, which would be, informal assessment. However, once the group finishes their project, you really do need to assess it, like I said, individually accountability as well as the group effort and criteria that you can decide on, at a later time. But assessment is important. The last step in cooperative learning needs to be processing. So that would be where the group comes together and they kind of rate how they did. They talk about strengths of the groups, what they did well, again, what they did not so well, and goals for what they want to improve for next time, especially on the groups that meet, over long term or again, using the same groups. So that's important to process that. A lot of learning happens in that step. So make sure to group process. Okay, let's talk about some key factors for success. Now that we know exactly how to implement this, how can we make sure that this is going to be successful? All of these things are thrown to us as teachers, but we want to make sure that these things are worthwhile. They're worth our time. So key factors for making sure that this is successful for you. Make sure that you are clear about your academic and your social and emotional learning goals. So not only towards the students, but for yourself. Make sure you know what you want to get out of your cooperative learning activity, and make sure to clarify that to the students so they know exactly what the academic and social and emotional learning goals are. Group composition is informed by those goals. So once you know your goals, then you know how to set up your groups because you know what you're looking for. Maybe it's more of an academic focus and maybe it's more of a social focus. So your groups are going to determine based on what your goals are, is how you're going to determine your groups. Okay, students have the opportunity to promote each other's success. So obviously we want to be able to recognize each other and support each other. Clear explanations are given. That kind of goes back to being clear about the goals. Students discuss the social and emotional learning skills that are required. And the class makes sure to reflect on those academic and social learning skills. Excuse me. Okay, this is very closely tied to social and emotional learning because it provides experience in tons of the different social and emotional learning areas, such as self-awareness. Self-awareness would be in cooperative learning would be things like how they play out in either dominating or facilitating the group's efforts, how one feels when someone disagrees, how they disagree, if it's respectful or not, and how, if they are respectful, how that might change the group dynamic, and how when they're disrespectful, how that changes the group dynamic. So all of those self-awareness skills get practice during their cooperative learning activities. Relationship skills. So these are things like, can people disagree and then still respect each other and be be friends and move on? Definitely. Practicing disagreement and still being friends is an important skill. Self-management skills, things like anger control, making sure that you're pursuing the group goals, not just your own. And if there's disagreements and setbacks, that you're making sure that how you contribute and how you need to maybe change what you're doing. Responsibility, that would be things like thinking about solutions, coming up with things, taking ownership and leadership for yourself in the group. Creativity, personal choice and personal input is really important for the group, to feel good about what they're doing. Excuse me. And then critical thinking and problem solving is such a huge, focus. We need to get our students more better problem solvers and deeper critical thinkers. So cooperative learning is going to provide some practice. Let's talk a little bit about the research. Let's back this thing up, what I'm talking about. Who says what about this? Johnson & Johnson is a huge pioneer in this topic of cooperative learning, and their research revealed that cooperative learning is consistently more effective than either competitive or individualistic learning, we've been focusing on for quite a while now, in promoting student enhancement of intrinsic motivation, effort to achieve, material retained, the quality of interpersonal relationships, reasoning skills used, psychological health, and academic achievement. These learning outcomes held across various content areas, grade levels, countries, and decades. So that's huge, right? I mean, cooperative learning is the way to go. It really does promote student achievement, and it makes it more personal. It's more relevant to them. So yeah. A couple more. Monroe in 2006 stated that studies of cooperative learning strategies regularly report an increase in engagement and active participation in the learning process, which in turn increases student motivation, time on task, and retention times, and improves cognitive reasoning and the ability to see from others' perspectives, which is a huge thing. The ability to see from others' perspectives is such an important skill. And then Tang in 1998 says that cooperative learning provides a non-threatening learning context for interaction between students. During cooperative learning, students are exposed to other perspectives and alternatives. They share and exchange ideas, criticize and provide feedback. All important to the learning process. And the last one, Mills, 2001. It helps us foster not only learning, but also a host of other positive outcomes, such as increased self-esteem, respect for others, and civility. It can transform our large, diverse lecture classes into a community of supportive teams. Cooperation learning satisfies for students a human desire for connection and cooperation. Let's talk real quickly about the benefits of cooperative learning. We know there's tons of benefits to cooperative learning because it's really more than just group work. It shows increased achievement, that would be like academically, increase in positive relationships, greater intrinsic motivation, higher self-esteem, more on-task behavior, always important, and better attitudes toward teachers and schools. A couple more benefits. Students take responsibility for their own learning more often after cooperative learning. Students translate teacher talk into student speak for their peers. That's a really important thing because especially with lower achieving students, teacher talk is often over their head. If they're lost on a concept, you're continuing to explain things and they're done. They have shut down. So the cooperative learning really allows those students that are a little bit lower achieving or maybe have a lower vocabulary to kind of catch up and to get some of their peers to translate what you were saying into things that they can really understand. Students engage in cognitive collaboration. That means that they must organize their thoughts in order to explain them to the classmates, right? You solidify the ideas because you have to explain it to someone else. Students' social nature is used to their advantage, so obviously students are having fun learning. They like to talk. They like to be with each other. Most students do anyway. Let's talk a couple examples of cooperative learning strategies. There's 10 listed in a handout that I'm going to provide at the end of the workshop here. So you don't have to worry about, if you didn't catch something. I'm going to go just over a couple of them just due to time constraints. So the first one, which we learned earlier in the class, if you are not familiar with it, the think, pair, share. Remember, I asked you to please think about something that you wanted to get out of the class. I then had you pair with a partner to discuss, and then we shared with the class, with the group. So this think, pair, share strategy allows for the students to first reflect. So that means they can formulate their thoughts, right, before they have to tell them to someone else. It then ensures that the person is responsible for actually thinking about the topic. So the discussion doesn't just focus on one person's ideas or thoughts because they're the only one that really thought, right? Both of them have to contribute to it. A time limit can be set for discussion so both students have a chance to share. All right, how about the 3-step interview? This would be, maybe dividing team members up into partners. So your table groups, for example, if you have your table groups into 4 or 6, you could divide them into partners, either 2 partners or 4 or 3. So partner number 1 interviews partner 2 on a particular topic by just asking questions. Partner 2 then interviews partner 1 by asking the same questions on the same topic. And partners then share the responses with the team members. The third one, round robin brainstorming, would be to divide the class into small groups. One person would be the recorder. The question is going to be posed, usually by the teacher, it's posed, and then there's many answers given as well. Students are given a time to think about the answers. After think time, members of the team share responses with one another, round robin style, meaning they go around into a circle. The recorder writes down the answers of each group members. This says that the question is posed with many answers. It doesn't have to be. It's just in a round robin brainstorming, you're trying to get some ideas flowing. So you might give some answers, possible answers, and then let them expand or give their own answer as well. So it doesn't have to be just the answers given. Circle of friends or wagon wheel. This is a really fun one. I like this one. It gets them interacting with more than 1 or 2 people, which, cooperative learning shows that the more students interact with one another, the more they learn. So arrange students in 2 circles, an inner circle and an outer circle, with the participants facing each other. You're going to have each person in the inner circle discuss a concept, tell a story, etc. And then have the person in the outer circle, who's facing the speaking participant, listen carefully and offer suggestions or answers. After a preset time, have the inner circle rotate 3 places to the right, or whatever you might. If it's a smaller group, have them just go 1 spot to the right or 2 spots to the right. If it's a large group, have them go more. Repeat 1 or 2 times. Then as a large group, you can share what was learned. I would go ahead at this time, stop, and let them go ahead and experience maybe the Circle of Friends wagon wheel activity, in order for them to kind of get another on-hand actual doing example, like we did the think, pair, share. So, and then there are a few more. Depending on time, I would go over them, but because my time is 22 minutes right now, I'm going to go ahead and just see that you can see there's note-taking pairs, jigsaw, which is a really common one and a really, really good way to get, again, more than one-on-one contact, as many groups, and then they switch groups, so they get a lot of different interactions. Fishbowl debate, numbered heads, team, pair, solo. This one's an interesting idea where students work together first in a group to solve a problem, and then with a partner to solve a problem, and then finally by themselves to solve a problem. So basically this uses the theory that students can solve more problems with help than they can alone, and then students progress to the point that they can solve the problem on their own after being in the team and then paired with a partner. So kind of scaffolding, group assignment scaffolding. 3 stay, 1 stray, and there's my references. So I would stop it now, ask for questions, and that's the end of my professional development workshop. Thank you very much.